Good morning, friends. Today we are going to speak about the Indian financial system. Before we start today, an overview. I would just like to know something. Good morning, friends. Today we are going to speak about the financial market, let us not talk about financial markets, let us basically understand. Good morning, friends, today we are going to speak about financial market, let us not talk about financial markets, let us basically understand. Good morning, friends, today we are going to speak about and there is competition. So the basic features of a financial market is that there are buyers and sellers. There is price discovery because of the demand and supply. As we all know, in economics we have studied, demand and supply will lead to price discovery, will determine the price of the products, of the goods and services. And there is a lot of competition that exists in the market. To start with the Indian financial system, there are basically three economic units in a country. Which are they? They are the corporate sector, the government, and the household sector. There are areas of people with surplus funds, and there are those with a deficit. A financial system functions as an intermediary and facilitates the flow of funds from the areas of surplus to the areas of deficit. I would like to explain you with this with an example. Friends, we all know about this formula. We have studied in economics. Y is equal to C plus S. What do you mean by this? It says the total income of an individual comprises of two main components, that is consumption and surplus. Now, when I say surplus, there has to be some residual income. After all the consumption that takes place, whatever is left over is my residual income, and that is said to be my surplus, or that is going to make my savings. Now, what is savings actually, friends? Savings is something which is a deferred consumption. What do you mean by deferred consumption? Deferred consumption means postponing your consumption. When I am postponing my consumption, it means that I am foregoing some benefits that would have come through the consumption of a particular good or service. Now, if I am deferring a consumption, I am postponing it, I would definitely like to have a compensation for the postponement, right? What is the compensation I will get? I will get it in the form of some returns. So when I say, yes, I have deferred my consumption, there has to be some compensation that has to come for my deferred consumption, and it comes through savings. So when I say my total income comprises of consumption and savings, I will like to have some compensation for these savings. Now, friends, when I say savings, if I just keep the money idle in the cupboard, is it called as a savings? No, it will not be called as a savings. Why? Because it is actually leading to dis-savings. Because of the inflation, the prices are going to keep rising, and as we have started in time value of money, that savings will actually lead to dis-savings because of the inflation. And later on, after a year or so, when I actually want to use that savings, it will not help me in any which ways. Why? Because the prices of goods might have gone high during that course of time. Now, friends, in order to have a good savings, what I actually need is, I need to direct that savings towards some investments. Now, from where do I get the investments? There has to be some place or some department, some organization which can help me to convert my savings into an investment. There has to be some category of people who are the seekers of funds. So if you can have a look at the particular diagram, it bifurcates the bifurcates the whole economic unit into two major categories. Which are the two major categories? One is seekers of funds. Now, who are the seekers of funds, friends? They are basically the business firms or the government, because they are always in deficit. They will always like to have funds for growth, for expansion, for modernization, or for public expenditure. If we are talking about the government, yes, they need funds for taking care of the public expenditure. Now, these are the seekers of funds. Right? That is one category of people. And there is another category of people who are the suppliers of funds. Now, who are the suppliers of funds, friends? The suppliers of funds are the households, the people like you and me, who have meager savings with us, right? And all these savings are going to be accumulated together and are going to be directed towards the seekers of funds. Right? So these seekers of funds are going to get the funds, that is the flow of funds in the form of savings, are going to move from the suppliers to the seekers of funds. Right? And when it moves, the flow of funds happen, there has to be something that has to come from the seekers to the suppliers also. What is that coming in? The flow of financial services. There will be a platter of goods and services that will be made available by the seekers to the suppliers of funds. Why? Because I need to attract the suppliers with some gamut of products or services which will help them to take a decision as to this will be the right choice for putting my savings into, because it is hard-earned income. Friends, when it is a hard-earned income, I would always love to put my hard-earned income in such a place where I am pretty sure about the returns, I am pretty sure about the principal coming back to me, right? So I am not only concerned about the returns, but I am basically more concerned about my principal, right? So when any individual likes to do any type of investment, that is, as I said, my deferred consumption gets converted into savings, and savings when is passed on to investments, definitely I would like to get some good returns, right? And before I make a choice, before I take a decision as to where I'm going to allocate my funds or where I'm going to invest my money, my hard-earned money, I have to do a proper analysis. Now, what is that analysis? That is nothing but my homework. I need to do a proper homework, right? And what is that homework? That homework is the study about the seekers of the funds, right? So I would like to understand that the seekers of the funds, what is their profile, whether they are pretty secured places wherein I can put my money and I can be rest assured of the principal as well as the returns, right? So the returns can come in the form of interest, it can come in the form of a dividend. So I will be more concerned about these two things. So whenever an individual, if he does any investment, he does his homework well. And his homework will be done in the form of an analysis, right? The analysis is bifurcated into two types. Which are the two types of analysis which individual does? We are going to elaborate the analysis later, but just for your understanding, the two types of analysis which an individual does before taking the call where he is going to allocate his funds are the fundamental analysis and the technical analysis, right? So when a fundamental and technical analysis is done, it will help the investor to take a decision, to be rest assured that yes, this is the right place where I can put my money, right? So he does his analysis depending on the temperament. So every individual is not going to have the same temperament. What is temperament? That is, what is my risk appetite? So when I talk about the investment avenues, or when I talk about the various platter of services available in the market, I would always like to put in my funds in that area which are where I'm acclimatized to the same manner in which the investment is. Now, before I take a call on the type of investment, I will have the basic temperaments which the investor has. Now, which are the various temperaments which an investor has? The investor would look for, definitely for the returns, right friends? So he will be more concerned about the returns. Secondly, the risk factor. Depending on his risk appetite, whether he's a risk averse person, whether he's a risk taker, whether he's a risk neutral, on these bases he will decide where he is going to put his money, his hard-earned money. So his basic objective of doing an investment will be on returns, risk, and the most important thing will be the liquidity. So when I talk about any investment, whenever I allocate my funds, when I mobilize my funds towards a particular category of investment avenues, I would always love to know what is the returns I can expect out of this investment, what is the risk I am taking for compensating on my consumption, and what is the liquidity, what is the marketability of those securities where I am investing, right? So the financial system function is an intermediary. It is acting as an intermediary between these two categories of people. So what flows from the seekers of the funds is, it is the financial services, and what the suppliers get from these financial services is the income and the financial claims which the suppliers will have from the seekers. So coming to the financial system, friends, financial system has various objectives. Now what are the objectives of a financial system? Firstly, a financial system plays a vital role in the economic growth of a country. It intermediates with the flow of funds between who save a part of their income, as we have already talked about, to those who invest in productive assets. Now definitely when I do any type of investment, I would be more concerned about where it is going to be allocated, right? So my hard-earned income, where it is going to be used is what is my major concern. Why? Because as I said earlier, I am more concerned about the returns as well as the security of my principal. So when I say yes, the flow of funds take place, the flow of funds take place from the savers, that is the savers of the funds, the household people, right, who have a saving, and it is given or it is passed on to those people who are going to invest the same money into productive assets, right? So what financial system does is it mobilizes and usefully allocates the scarce resources of a country. It facilitates the capital formation by providing a link between the savers and investors, right? So they act as an intermediary. The financial system is an intermediary between the savers and the investors, a market for creating and exchanging of financial assets. It performs the following functions essential for the modern economy. Now, what are the functions which are being performed by the financial system? That is, firstly, the payment system, pooling of funds, transfer of resources, risk management, which is very important as on today, and then the price information, right, friends? So we are going to elaborate all these essential functions in length. To start with, the Indian financial system basically consists of three important parts. Now what are the three important parts of a financial system? One is the financial markets, right? So as we said, financial market is a place where the buying and selling of financial products take place. So it can be a money market, capital market, forex market. The features of each market will be explained in length in the coming sessions. Talking about the financial instruments, right, definitely when I say financial markets, the markets are a platform, right? A platform where we are going to deal in various financial instruments. Now, which are the financial instruments that are going to be dealt in the financial markets? It can vary from loans, deposits, bonds, equity products, and henceforth. Financial intermediation. Now from the third category which Indian financial system consists of is financial intermediation. Now who are the intermediaries that participate in the Indian financial system are the banks, the mutual fund, the insurance companies. So these are the intermediaries who help for channelizing the funds from the savers to the seekers, right? So Indian financial system is bifurcated into two. One is the formal side and the informal side. Now, if you can have a look at the chart, it clearly explains the basic two categorization of the Indian financial system. The two categories are the formal, that is the organized, more regulated, institutionalized form of the financial system, and the other one is an informal, unorganized and unregulated financial system, right? In formal organization, we have the regulators, right? The regulators can be Ministry of Finance, it can be RBI, it can be SEBI, it can be IRDA. So these are the players who are going to act as regulators of the financial system. Then we have financial institutions like the banks, right? They are also a category of the formal financial system. Then we have the financial markets. As I said earlier, we have various financial markets, and then the financial instruments and the financial services. So all are collated together to form a formal organized financial system. Whereas the unorganized financial system comprises of the money lenders, the local brokers, then it can be traders, landlords and pawnbrokers, right? So they are not being regulated by any of the regulators. That's the reason they can do things as per their whims and fancies. They can charge exorbitantly for their lendings. Coming to the financial institutions are further bifurcated into four major types. Now, which are the major four types of financial institutions that are existing in India? First is the banking institutions, right? Then the non-banking institutions, mutual funds, insurance and housing finance companies, right? So the major four categories of financial institutions are banking institution, non-banking institutions, mutual funds and insurance and housing finance companies. Now, coming to the first one, banking institutions. Now, the banking institutions are further subdivided into two major types. Which are the two major types of financial institutions? They are scheduled commercial banks, right, and scheduled cooperative banks, right? They are being regulated by RBI. RBI is the regulator of all the banking institutions existing in India. So, Reserve Bank of India, being a regulator, regulates the working of all the scheduled commercial banks and the scheduled cooperative banks. Under scheduled commercial banks, we again have a bifurcation into four major categories. Which are the four major types of scheduled commercial banks, friends? The first one is public sector banks, right? Like we have State Bank of India, we have Bank of Baroda, we have Indian Bank. So these are all coming in the category of public sector banks. Then we have private sector banks like HDFC, Axis, ICICI Bank, IIBF. So all these are private sector banks, right? And then we have foreign banks like Standard Chartered, we have Deutsche. Then there are many more who are in the pipeline who are going to start their business in India. Then we have regional rural banks which are functioning at the rural end. Right, so the scheduled commercial banks are bifurcated into the four major categories. Public sector bank, there is a major contribution that comes from the government, right? So more than 51% of the equity is by the government. In public sector banks, we have a participation coming in from the government. Whereas in private sector banks, there is hardly any contribution from the government side. They are private players who are doing the business of banking. And then we have foreign banks which are having their registered office, which have their head offices in some other country, but then they have started functioning in India, right? Coming to the non-banking financial institutions, friends, the non-banking financial institutions are categorized into two main categories. Now, which are the two main categories of non-banking financial institutions? They are the NBFCs, right? That is non-banking financial corporations, and the DFIs. Now, what are the DFIs? They are the development financial institutions, right? So the development financial institutions were started with an objective of enhancing a particular sector. They were majorly concentrating on the development of the industrial sector, the agricultural sector in India. And that was the objective of starting with the development financial institutions. The non-banking financial corporations can be ranging from an equipment leasing company, they can be a hire purchase finance company, it can be an investment company, it can be a loan company, or it can be residuary non-banking finance company. So anyone which don't fall in the category of the first four categories, they will come in the fifth category of NBFCs. Coming to the development financial institutions, as I said, the objective of coming in with the development financial institutions was to develop a particular sector, right? At the national level, we had IFCI, we have IDBI, we have IIBI, we have IDFC, we have NABARD, we have Exim Bank, and we have NHB, right? So these are performing their functions at a national level, right? At the state level also, we have development financial institutions focused on the growth and development of various sectors, that is the SFCs and the SIDCs, right? And coming to the DFIs, development financial institutions also have ECGC, DICGC. We are going to study in length of all these development financial institutions in the coming sessions. Today we are just trying to cover up an overview of our Indian financial system, friends. Now, financial markets are bifurcated. Now we have already spoken about the financial institutions, right? Now coming to the next category of the formal organized financial system is the financial markets. Financial markets are bifurcated into two types. One is capital market and money market. Now what is a capital market, friends? Capital market is a market for long-term investments, right? Most of the investments that take place in a capital market are perpetual in nature, right? So if an investor has an objective of investing his funds for a longer period, for long-term investments, definitely he would love to go in towards the capital market. Money markets basically is a market for short-term instruments, and they are used by the RBI for controlling their monetary policies, right? So they are basically short-term in nature, right? The money market instruments can range from treasury bill, call money, notice money. It can be a commercial bill, it can be commercial papers, it can be certificate of deposits, term money, etc. In case of the capital markets, as I said, they are long-term investments. It will range from equity market, that is equity market which deals in equity shares. Then we have a debt market wherein we have different types of bonds and debentures, and then the derivative market. Every market has its own features, right? And every market has different types of instruments which are dealt in that market. So when we talk about the equity market or the debt market, there is again further bifurcation as primary markets and secondary markets.